was shot minutes before you walked in the door, which is scary. What would have happened if we were there?
A vicious murder.
It was obvious whoever wanted to kill him was very angry because they probably could have shot him one or twice, but they had emptied their magazine into him.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
You know, they just didn't get along. They were fighting all the time.
Maybe an argument took place. Maybe a disagreement took place.
Said, you know, hey, what are you looking at? You're staring at me. And he pulled out a gun.
The truth will be revealed.
We know that that last phone call actually came from after John was already found dead. So I think that phone call came from the guy that killed him.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Sylvania Township, a quaint, close-knit town bordering Toledo, Ohio.
People are happy out here. In Christmas time, the neighborhoods are all lit up. You could tell the festivities for the holidays are coming around. Every neighborhood tries to outdo the next neighborhood.
We've always been fairly lucky. We haven't had that many homicides. Probably the majority of calls that we get are domestic violences, and we get a lot of burglary calls.
But on a quiet afternoon, just 10 days before Christmas, two young girls make a grisly discovery.
I was 13, and my sister Nicole was 12. We were both in the same school at the time. We were the last kids off the bus, and we got home, our dad's car's in the driveway. I thought, I forgot my keys in the house, and thank God Dad's home. So we try to walk in the front door. Front door is locked. Okay, maybe he's napping. Knock on the door. Nothing. I go to the back door. Still no answer. We look inside. Try to see what was going on. My sister Nicole says, Dad's on the floor. I was like, what do you mean he's on the floor? She goes, Dad's on the floor, he's not moving. There's a front window on the house. There wasn't a lock on it, so I pushed the window open and got my sister inside. She unlocked the front door, and we looked at our dad. He wasn't breathing, he was blue. At first we thought he actually had committed suicide. I dialed 911.
911, what's your emergency?
My dad is on the floor of the house. He's all bloody.
Okay, first off, we need you to relax. Is your dad conscious?
No, he's passed out. He's on the floor.
Is he breathing?
No, he's not. Nicole, go check on him. He's bleeding. He's bleeding.
Where is your dad bleeding?
I think my dad is dead.
I was scared. I didn't know what was going on. The 911 operator told us we needed to go outside because, of course, she doesn't know what's going on. And within minutes, we had police officers in our driveway.
Veteran homicide detectives Todd Slayman and Robert Caldwell are called to the scene to investigate.
When the 911 call came in, I was actually sitting in my office in the detective bureau, and originally I was told by the dispatcher that there was a possible suicide. And then shortly after that, there was an update, possibly that this was a homicide. So that led us to believe that this is not going to be a standard run-of-the-mill investigation. When we first arrived on the scene, Mr. Reeve was laying there on the floor. He was on his side, face down. There was a guitar that was laying there by the body, so you could tell this was not a suicide. He was shot 7 times. He had several bullet wounds. Some of the wounds hit his shoulder, one wound hit his hip, but the wound that really killed him, it hit him directly right in the heart.
This crime stood out. That John Reeve was shot this many times in the middle of the daytime, that stood out. There was the violence of it.
when we see someone shot 7 times, this is overkill. Many firearms actually only have a magazine that will hold 6 or 7 rounds. So someone literally emptied a gun into this man. That is not a restrained, tactical murder. That is a rage murder.
John Reeby was a 39-year-old single father, taking care of his 2 daughters.
Oh, my dad was the normal, guy, loved football. He was a bowler, he golfed. He was very family-oriented. He loved spending time with us, doing things with my sister and I. He was a great guy. He met my mom at a gas station. And he said, nice truck. And they swapped numbers, and then they dated about 5 years before they got married, and then I was born 3 years later. And my sister 15 months after that. It was more him doing everything for us. My mom wasn't in the picture as much as she should have been. My dad just finally said enough's enough and leave, and I'll raise the kids myself.
John was self-employed as a heating and air conditioning installer. Money was tight, but he did everything he could to provide for his daughters.
My dad loved Christmas. We were supposed to go get a Christmas tree that night. Our house was actually a pretty small house, but every year, my dad always got the biggest, bushiest tree that he could find. He would get up in the morning and cook breakfast, like a big breakfast. Always said breakfast before presents. It was awesome. He loved it. When they told us that he was shot, I was shocked. Like, what do you mean? No, that can't be possible. Who would do it? And, I just wanted to know why somebody would do that to my dad.
To find John Reeby's killer, detectives must unravel the last 24 hours of his life, beginning with the crime scene.
We started processing the scene, and we found casings on the floor, gunshot casings. The casings have the caliber of the gun on the back of the casings.
It was a .380 semi-automatic weapon. They're small guns you could just carry in your pocket. So we knew what kind of gun we were looking for at that point in time.
When they scour the house, police don't locate the gun, but they do make some important discoveries.
There was no sign of a struggle. We're assuming he was playing the guitar. He was probably sitting. So John may have not known it was coming, and there was no signs of any forced entry. So we believe whoever shot John Reeby may have known.
At the scene, the blood that was on the body was not dry, and his body was still somewhat limber. The flesh was still soft. That led us to believe the crime was fairly recent. It definitely happened in the last couple hours.
Detectives talked to John's daughters, hoping to pin down his final movements in the hours before his murder.
That day, my sister and I, we got up for school, and the normal, brush your teeth, eat. Dad saying, grab your backpack, don't miss the bus. He told us, I'm going to work, I should be home when you guys get home. We said, okay, have a good day.
After school let out, they got on the bus and were dropped off near their house at approximately 3:15 p.m. that day.
At 3:22, 7 minutes later, the 911 call comes in from Jamie and Nicole finding their dad dead, shot 7 times. We're looking back and putting the whole timeline together.
From John's daughter's information and the state of the body at the crime scene, detectives believe John was killed between 8 a.m. when the girls left for school and 3:21 p.m. when they found him dead on the floor.
The detectives wanted to know, do you have any clue what your dad did today? I'm like, no, I was at school. He said he was going to work. I'm not sure if he did.
Needing to pin down John's movements that day, investigators turned to his friend, Eric Babis, who sometimes assisted him at work.
Eric Babos was the handyman for John Reeby in the jobs that he did for the air conditioning and heating company. Eric and John went to high school together, so they were longtime friends.
Eric Mattis was low-key. He was wanting to get us information. He wanted to help us.
But Eric tells detectives he didn't see or talk to John the day of the murder.
Eric advised us December the 15th. John was not working, and he was taking that day off. And Eric was working at his brother's house, which is about 3.5, 4 miles away from John Reeby's house. He advised us he'd been there all day.
With no leads from Eric, detectives turn their attention to John's estranged wife, Lisa.
An ex-wife, an ex-husband, an estranged spouse. This is someone who, in most circumstances, needs to be excluded as being a suspect and as a person of interest almost by default. You need to look at what were the dynamics of this relationship. What were any strains or stresses on the relationship?
What we had heard from the girls is that, they just didn't get along. They were fighting all the time.
My mom was around for birthdays and Christmases and holidays. They kept in touch because, we're her kids. But there's a lot of fighting.
Maybe there was some sort of vendetta or personal argument that had evolved to a certain level where she got angry and perpetrated violence that erupted in this horrible killing.
Hours after John Reeby is found dead, police question his estranged wife, Lisa.
Lisa was very upset. She was emotionally distraught seeing her daughters in that state of being so upset. She was visibly shaken.
Some suspects will go too far, will go over the top. Excessive grief, excessive theatricality. It can have a number of motives behind it, but everyone deals with grief differently. So without knowing what that person's baseline responses to trauma and what their triggers are, you always need to dig deeper.
To find out whether Lisa could have killed John, investigators need to establish motive and whether she had the opportunity.
Maybe there was some kind of domestic issue between the two of them. We're looking to find out where was she that day, what was she doing that day, was she the last person to see John?
Lisa said that she last talked to John around 11:46 that morning.
With this new piece of information, detectives rework the timeline for the hours before John's murder.
A phone call can help build a victim's timeline, much like any device-related activity. It leaves a trail. It provides a definitive place where they are last seen and heard from. And the contents of that communication can also be very important.
They had talked about going out, possibly next night getting some Christmas gifts for the girls. She said that there was no duress, no anger.
Detectives look into Lisa's story and work to verify her alibi.
Lisa was a receptionist, and Lisa said that she was at work that day.
There was a couple witnesses there that had said, she was there at the time frame that we were looking at.
And when the girls called her and told her what was going on, she left early and went right over to John's house.
With Lisa at work all day, detectives determined she couldn't be involved in John's murder, and she's no longer considered a suspect.
They were separated, but Lisa would describe John as a good father. He took care of the girls. You come into a lot of homes where the common denominator is the kids. I think John and Lisa had that type of relationship.
Lisa then offers up a piece of information that sheds new light on the investigation.
Well, in the meantime, she had checked her phone messages, and she had realized that John had left her 2 voice messages just, a minute before 3 o'clock that day. And she played both those messages for us.
Hey, Lisa, how come you haven't called me back yet? Call me back. I need you to go pick that check up for me.
John Reeby had called his ex-wife asking her if she could go to the heating and air conditioning business in Toledo and pick up a check that was waiting for him for a project that he had done earlier in the week.
And then Within a minute and a half, he called right back and says, "Hey, Lisa, someone is waiting for his money. I need you to go pick up this check."
There was a level of urgency to the second phone call.
Lisa, hurry up. Call me back, man. I got somebody here waiting for this money.
It was more, "Hey, Lisa, why haven't you called me back? I need you. I'll explain it to you. But I need you to call me back. I got someone here waiting." So, yeah, there was definitely a different tone.
This was before cell phones really had taken off, so a lot of this was landlines, and he knew exactly where the person was. John had called her from his house at that time.
These phone calls are a significant development in the case and further narrow down the timeline.
From the phone calls, we know that John was alive at 2:58. We know that John was alive at 2:59. We know John was found dead at 3:21. So whoever shot and killed John, it was in that timeline. Now we have a 22-minute time frame that we're dealing with.
But it's what detectives hear next that turns the case on its head.
At the 2:59 phone call, you could hear something in the background. You could hear a second male's voice. That's when you can hear John say, "I got someone here."
So we know he's in the house with someone, and that someone is probably the person that killed John, because 20 minutes from that message, he's found dead by his two daughters.
Detectives now believe if they can identify the background voice on the phone message, they'll find their killer.
At that particular time, I was involved with an FBI task force in Northwest Ohio, and we had access to Quantico, Virginia, through our office. So we sent the tapes to Quantico to try to get them enhanced so they can identify who's in the background.
The FBI had voice analysis that the FBI was unable to determine who that person was.
Getting no more information about the background voice, detectives asked Lisa, John's ex, about his enemies.
Lisa advises that the only person John had arguments with was Chuck from the heating and air conditioning company that John had subcontracted for. Chuck owed John some money for completing the job. John was very upset. Maybe an argument took place. Maybe there was disagreement took place. So Chuck became a person of interest at that time.
He did owe my dad money from just previous jobs. I didn't know if there was something going on with them.
With suspicion swirling around John's business associate Chuck, detectives pay him a visit at his HVAC company.
He was the guy that was in charge, very confident of himself, and he definitely wanted things done his way.
When police ask about his relationship with John, Chuck admits to owing him $500.
Chuck dealt with subcontractors, and he had learned that you don't pay your subcontractors until the job's done, or else they wouldn't complete the project. He thought not only John, but with all other subcontractors, if you prepaid them, they wouldn't get the job done.
But Chuck said that John had completed the job a week before, and he actually had a check waiting for him.
Chuck tells detectives about a series of phone calls he had with John, all near the time of John's death.
The first phone call, I believe, was at 3:03, and John wanted to know if he could send someone else to pick the checks up. And Chuck said, "No, you have to come down and get the checks." There was another phone call at 3:05. John was saying, "Hey, can I send someone else down?" "No, you can't. You have to come down and get the check."
8 minutes later, the phone rang again.
The next phone call, there were two voices on the phone. And the second voice says, "Hey, John owes me money. It's $150, so I'm going to come down and get the check." That call was at 3:13. And that's the one where Chuck said to the guy, "Hey, I told you before, I'm not changing my mind. John has to come down and get the check." The phone went dead. He actually hung up on him.
Chuck tells detectives he didn't recognize the other person on the phone. He shares his company's phone records to prove he's telling the truth.
Chuck said he was in his office that day, and he was with his employee. The phone records tell us that they had multiple phone calls, so we knew they were at their business.
With the company's phone records and Chuck's statements clearing him from the murder, Detectives Caldwell and Slayman now look at the implications of his story.
We narrowed down the time frame from the phone calls, so now we got an 8-minute time frame that we're dealing with.
The timeline in this case is remarkably tight. We have a series of telephone calls, and then minutes later, his two daughters coming home. You can't help but question whether his daughters actually crossed paths with the killer, and if they were just a couple of minutes earlier, if they too would have been victims themselves.
He was shot minutes before he walked in the door, which is scary. What if the bus had gone a different route that day and we get dropped off first instead of last? We could have been there, walking in the door. Like, what would have happened if we were there?
Working with a timeline of just 8 minutes, from 3:13 to 3:21 p.m., detectives need to uncover the identity of the man with John, the afternoon he was murdered.
What are the odds that somebody else gained access to the home and killed him in that same length of time and was still able to escape? It really leaves only one possibility, and that's the other man that was on the phone at 3:13.
It was an incredibly tight timeline at this point, and now it's just a matter of trying to figure out who that person that was in the house.
As business owner Chuck is wrapping up his interview, he drops a bombshell, telling police that at 4:06 p.m., he received a final call.
Chuck says it's the same person. So the same guy calls again and says, "Hey, John's in the hospital. I need to come down and get the check." And that's when Chuck said, "When John's out of the hospital, you can come get it." Not that Chuck believed him.
That last phone call came in after John was already found dead. Chuck told us that was the same guy that was connected with those other calls from John Reevy's house. So we believe that last phone call came from the person that killed John.
As police wait for a trace on the phone call, they circle back to the crime scene, looking for any new clues.
The girls never seen anybody leaving as they were coming home. We talked to the bus driver. The bus driver didn't remember seeing anybody leaving the scene.
Where the house was, it was a very busy road. We combed the neighborhood, and no one saw or heard anything.
With no new witnesses or leads, the investigation hits a wall.
You get a little setback. It'd be much easier in the case if, neighbor 2 doors down would have said, "Hey, I saw this guy running out of the house." That would have been huge. But there was nothing. It was extremely difficult.
Then, they get an unexpected break.
I got a phone call from Eric Babbis. He advised me that he might have some information that would assist in our investigation.
Eric tells police he had been at a party at John's house the Friday before his murder, when a man came in he didn't recognize.
He told us that there was a guy that came in there and he was delivering drugs and said that his name was JR. And then when he was leaving, JR said, "Hey, what are you looking at? You're staring at me." And he pulled out a gun and he pointed it at John and Eric and threatened them.
John Reevy was a dedicated father. He took care of his daughters. But John Reevy also liked to party. He liked the nightlife. He drank. He used drugs on occasion.
We got John's phone to see who he had talked to the day of the 15th. When we were looking at phone records, we could see that John had called JR.
Detectives now zero in on a new suspect in John's murder. Local drug dealer, JR.
Sylvania Township police detectives, when they were told that JR was a drug dealer, they thought that perhaps that he had something to do with the crime. And maybe John Reevy owed him money for the drugs.
Police ask John's friend Eric to come down to the station again, hoping he can help identify JR.
Eric described him as a big guy. He was imposing, kind of short-cropped hair, well-built, and he brandished a gun, but you didn't recognize him.
When detectives run the name JR through the database, they discover his real name is Valen Rogers, and he's been arrested for an unrelated crime.
So myself and Sergeant Colwell, we went down to Lucas County Sheriff's Department, and we did an interview with him in a back conference room. And we actually sat and talked with Valen Rogers about John Reeve. Valen Rogers was a big guy. He took care of himself. He obviously worked out.
When detectives question Valen about the day of John's murder, he says he was visiting a friend 11 miles away.
According to Valen, the last time he spoke with John was on the 10th. That was the last time he said he's seen him alive. The day of the homicide, John was trying to score some dope, and it called Valen Rogers. But they never connected.
From the phone records, you could see where it went to voicemail, so we knew that information that Valen Rogers was giving us was true.
Valen also denies waving a gun around at John's party.
Valen says, I was at the party, I scored. I scored some dope for John, I was in and out. He said he liked John Reeve. He said he always had the money, it was a simple transaction. Why would I kill him?
Detectives tracked down friends of Valen Rogers, and they confirmed they were with him in another town until 4 p.m. on the day John was murdered. Detectives also looked closer at Rogers' activities the night of the party.
There was another person that Eric said was at the party, so we called him up and basically said, hey, can you come in and talk to us for a little bit? And we asked him, did some guy come there and deliver drugs? He said, oh yeah, some guy came, brought some drugs, and asked him, did he pull out a gun and threaten you guys? And he said, no, there was no guy with a gun. So at that point, we knew that the story that Eric Babbis came to tell us that night was a complete lie.
Now investigators turn their attention back to John's longtime friend, Eric Babbis, and discover he's got a criminal past.
He had a drug and alcohol problem. He had a DUI arrest. He had a temper problem. He had domestic violences. His wife had moved out on him. His kid wasn't staying with him anymore. He was a guy that was, kind of down and out.
My dad helped him out a lot. Like, he had a kid younger than us, and my dad helped him. Like, hey, I know you don't have any work right now. You can help me out, and I'll pay you to, grab my tools, help me carry things.
The more detectives learn about Eric, the more red flags they find.
The girls thought Eric was not a good influence on their dad. He partied too much, and they never liked him. They thought he acted strange around them.
He was kind of weird, but not anything where I thought he would ever do anything like this. Like, shoot my dad.
Investigators have zeroed in on John Reeby's longtime friend, Eric Babbis, as their prime suspect in his murder.
Eric's alibi was that he was renovating his brother's house. It was on West Acre, which is about, 3.5, 4 miles from the crime scene. And he said he was dropped off by his father around 10-ish and picked up by his brother around 4:30 that afternoon, and he had never left the house.
Detectives Caldwell and Slayman reach out to Eric's family, asking if they can confirm the handyman's alibi.
They were saying, yeah, we dropped him off and picked him up. But during the time frame of the murder, he's unaccounted for.
Eric Babos was at the house alone the whole day, and so he couldn't get anyone to substantiate the alibi that he was there. He could have at any time gotten a ride from somebody else, ridden his bike, or walked to John Reeby's house.
Through John's phone records, detectives catch Eric in another lie.
Eric said that he had last spoken with John the day before the homicide, and he had not been there that day, he had not talked to John that day. But from the phone records, that's a lie. He spoke to John the day of the homicide. He spoke to him in the morning, around 8 in the morning. Then he called him around 11-ish.
Investigators confront Eric with this information, and his story changes.
He admitted to us that he did talk to John that morning, and he said he wanted to know if they were going to go work that day. Eric said John told him, I'm going to have some coffee. I'm going to, see what's going on. I don't know if we're working today or not. And then Eric said, we got to get paid. And John said, I'll get with you later on it. So we knew they were talking to each other on the phone.
Once you start lying to investigators, they are going to lay hard on that person and start to look at everything they've said, and they're going to keep digging.
Suspicion about Eric keeps growing as Jamie remembers something unusual that happened the day of her father's murder.
Eric called my house and actually asked for my dad, and I said, well, no, my dad can't come to the phone right now. Something's going on. And he's saying, I want my money. It's $150. Like, why? All of a sudden you're calling and asking for money?
Eric said he called because he wanted to get the $150 because he promised his son that he was going to take him Christmas shopping. So he wanted that money right away.
We know that John called Lisa before 3 o'clock that day and left her a voice message and said there was a guy waiting there and he's waiting to get his money. Now we find out Eric wanted to get his money, so Eric Babbis actually kind of gave us his motive.
Having identified a motive, detectives take a closer look at Eric's movements on the day John was killed.
We went to his brother's house where he was supposed to be working that day to see if there was work going on, those kind of things. It was kind of unusual because there was a bike in the side yard there, and you could tell by the tracks and the snow and that someone had been riding that bike in the last day. I actually had my son, who was 11 years old at the time, and I had him ride a bicycle from Eric's brother's house to John Reeby's house and timed him. And there's 2 or 3 different ways you could go to do it. And my son was able to do it in about 20, 25 minutes. So we knew Eric could do it easily there and back.
John was killed between 3:13 and 3:21 in the afternoon, and Eric Babbis's alibi for that time frame isn't holding up.
He puts himself at this house doing work. He said he was going out back and forth, taking stuff out to the trash can. We checked both the neighbors that were next to this house, and I said, did you ever see Eric Babbis there? And these people knew Eric, because he had actually lived in that house for a while. And they said, no, we never saw Eric that day.
With Eric in their crosshairs, detectives get a search warrant for his home and phone, looking for evidence that connects him to John's murder.
Well, he's searching for anything, a gun or clothing items with some blood stains or something. Maybe it was on the clothes, maybe unaccounted for money, maybe a check stub, or anything that can link to the crime.
But investigators aren't able to locate the gun that killed John Reeby, or any items that yield physical evidence.
It would be pretty rare or stupid of someone to shoot somebody 7 times and then hold on to that gun. That gun, I'm sure, is in a river somewhere.
Still thinking it's not real. Like, why is this happening? Waiting for answers, waiting for what really happened. Pretty much twisted our whole world around. It's horrible.
While detectives have established that Eric had the motive and opportunity to kill John, they don't have physical evidence tying him to the murder. They revisit the timeline and learn that at 4:15 p.m., Eric's brother took him to the bank and hardware store after picking him up that day.
There was a video camera at the bank, and there was a video camera at the department store he was in.
The police detectives were able to determine what Eric Bobbles was wearing that day through video that was taken.
Detectives get another search warrant. This one specifically for the clothing Eric was wearing on December 15th, the day of the crime.
We sent that shirt that he was wearing to the lab, and that came back with gunshot residue on that. It was on the left sleeve, which made sense because the way the gun would reject, it would probably spray his left sleeve. I mean, this was an investigator's dream.
after discovering physical evidence linking Eric Babis to the murder of John Reeby, Detectives Caldwell and Slayman set a trap for their prime suspect.
We asked Eric Babis, would there be a reason, you would have something on that shirt, do you sport shoot, or, do you skeet shoot, are you a hunter or something like that? No, I don't do anything. I don't own any guns. He locked himself into that.
Investigators are certain Eric is their killer, but they still don't have enough evidence to make an arrest.
You don't always have an offender on video pulling the trigger. You don't always have DNA. Cases are built a brick at a time, and when you don't have enough circumstantial evidence, that's when you may not get convictions.
Detectives Slayman and Caldwell fear Eric might get away with murder. Then they get the break they've been waiting for.
Chuck had advised us that there was that last phone call where someone was trying to get paid, trying to get the money. So when we got Eric's phone records for December the 15th, we saw that that phone call actually came from Eric Babis' cell phone. He called and asked for the money again. So that last phone call, that after John was already found dead, came from Eric's phone.
That was huge. That was a huge significant break in the case because now we have Eric Babis that's been identified by Chuck. He said that's the same person who said, I want to come down and get the check. There's only one person that was connected to that, John's helper, Eric Babis.
On December 29th, 2004, just 4 days after Christmas, detectives arrest Eric Babis for John Reeby's murder.
We went and knocked at the door, and I remember he came down, walked down the steps and sat on the steps. And we told him we have an arrest for aggravated murder. And he just got up and put his hands behind his back. Yeah, 100% reinforced. We had the right guy. It was Eric Babis.
Detectives are now able to reconstruct the final 24 hours of John's life.
The morning of the homicide, John Reeby gets his kids off to school around 8 o'clock. He gets them off to the bus and that. And he spoke to Lisa around 11:46 that morning. John stays in, and he's got that urge to party a little bit. So John called Valen Rogers, but they never connected. 2 o'clock, Eric, who's been dropped off at his brother's house on West Acre, decides, I'm going to go over there. I'm going to confront John because I want my money. During that time, before 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Eric gets inside the house and confronts John. Hey, I need this $150. We did a job for you. I worked for you. I want my money.
John at that time tried to appease him and reached out to the ex-wife, Lisa, to see if she would go get the money. And he was unable to make contact with her. At that point in time, John called Chuck to see if it would be okay if his helper, Eric, could just go pick up the money. And then he was advised that John had to sign off on the check. Eric didn't believe that, so John called back again, and this time he actually handed the phone to Eric Babis, and he asked Chuck to explain to him why he couldn't come get the money himself.
We think right in that time, right around 3:13, either John is deceased or John's going to be dead. Because at 3:21, Jamie and Nicole find their dad dead. There's a fourth phone call at 4:06 where Chuck from the heating air conditioning place picks up, and it's Eric Babis saying, hey, I'm John's helper. John owes me money. Can I come get the checkup? No. John has to come. There's absolutely no doubt in that case that Eric Babis shot John Reeby 7 times, over $150.
I think money was really just the rationalization. It was about ego and proving a point. No one was going to deny him that amount of money, whether it was $150 or $150,000. And at the end of the day, what we're dealing with here is actually someone with sociopathic tendencies who could rationalize in their twisted mind that that was a logical outcome.
Eric's known us since we were born. So it's not like he didn't know us. We had enough interaction with him. It wasn't anything like this random guy, random person who's upset about something, who killed my dad. No, I'll never forgive him. I'll always be angry.
On August 5th, 2005, a jury finds Eric Babbis guilty of the murder of John Reeby and sentence him to life in prison.
My dad and Eric have been friends since high school. Like, how could you do that to somebody you've known most of your life? My dad helped them out a lot. So, like, why? Do you not have a heart?
The timeline was everything. And I can't remember in my 38 years a case having such a close timeline. You almost never get something like that. Everything played out. You could match the crime to the time, to the phone calls, the 911 calls. It all fit together very tightly.
This case is one of tragedy. It's Christmas time. You have a father murdered, leaving two daughters fatherless. The family was destroyed, reduced to ruins. Very, very difficult.
My dad is a great dad. He's a hard worker. But I miss his goofiness and his singing in the car. That's what I miss the most. It's hard knowing my kids won't know him. And my son actually asks about him because he sees pictures of him. And it's hard. Then he's like, who's that? Oh, that's Grandpa. Where's Grandpa? It's hard to explain. And Christmas is hard, but we just try to make the best of it. So always remember my dad.
To this gang, and the killing was retribution.
The truth will be revealed.
There's the psychopathic undercurrent that was driving him, plus entitlement and greed. We have a cocktail of the most volatile motivators.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Wilmington, Delaware, the largest city in the state, where some of America's wealthiest entrepreneurs live as modern-day royalty.
The DuPont Chemical Corporation was founded right on the banks of the river here, and Wilmington became sort of a prosperous little small city. It's still a city with a lot of wealth, and in the suburbs of the city, there's some of the richest people in the world. Wilmington's also on the corridor of I-95, so it's on a pipeline of drugs. So consequently, there's a lot of drug gangs that's popped up.
Wilmington itself has gotten some negative press. It was recently referred to as Murder Town in a nationwide article.
Wilmington was the third most violent city of its size in the country. But it's really based on 4 small neighborhoods. If you go there at night and you're involved in anything illegal, your life could be in jeopardy.
Early one Sunday morning, Wilmington's violence crosses over into an unexpected part of town. The Paladin Club condominiums.
Newcastle County 911.
I just heard arguing, and the last thing I heard was what the F and then 3 gunshots.
Newcastle County 911. We need help. My neighbor is laying on the ground. She's hurt, right? She has blood all over her body.
So at 1:16 a.m., 911 received a call about a woman down on the ground, apparently shot, very bloody scene. Police arrived and they saw this woman. She was shot at close range. She was shot 4 times. She was shot in the face and other parts of her body.
The victim is 39-year-old Olga Connell.
Olga is a sweet, very striking woman. She's outgoing. She likes to socialize. She grew up in Russia, in this coastal city. In her mid-20s, she decided to come to the United States.
At the crime scene, police soon make another grisly discovery.
There's a male off to the left of the front door. He was lying face down, clutching his cell phone. He had multiple gunshot wounds, and there were cartridge casings around his body. With close proximity to the cartridge casings, you could tell that someone stood over top of him and fired.
The second victim is Olga's husband, mechanic and entrepreneur, Joe Connell.
My Joey, he was a sweet boy. Joey was very active. He was interested in so many things growing up. He had a wonderful personality. He made everybody around him happy. He was special.
The Connells are newlyweds who got married 3 months earlier.
Joe was a rugged, motorcycle driving mechanic who liked to eat takeout all the time. And then he met Olga, who was sophisticated and gorgeous and liked to go out to restaurants and fancy stuff. So they blended that. She would do what he liked to do. He did what she liked to do. They just enjoyed each other. Oh, they were happy.
Heading up the investigation into the murders of Joe and Olga Connell are Sergeants Jamie Leonard and Justin Breslin.
At the crime scene, Olga had her keys in the front door. Her phone was on the sidewalk. All her jewelry was still on. They had car keys. They had everything.
We could tell fairly quickly that it wasn't a robbery or anything like that.
This is something very personal. A lot of rounds were fired at them. Olga clearly made it to the door. And she starts taking fire. And based upon the way he fell, which was face down, Joe attempted to flee, but was unsuccessful.
There was 2 different calibers of ammunition. It was 9mm and 22 caliber ammunition. It definitely means 2 different weapons. But whether or not there were 2 shooters remains to be known.
This is often the telltale marker of what we call a team killing, which is 2 or more people united in a single act of murder.
This wasn't something that just randomly happened. It was something that appeared to be planned.
There's an empty parking spot directly in front of their building. And in that parking spot, off to the side, there's a live round of ammunition. So, was the shooter parked in this parking spot? And if they weren't, why didn't Joe and Olga park directly in front of their building? Because it had been raining. So the natural deduction in that was that this particular spot was occupied by the person or people responsible for this. This case was unique in the sense that there were two victims. We deal with and have seen drug-related killings or killings that were the result of a robbery going bad. But the manner in which they were shot is not something we customarily see in here, and that is an execution. They were executed in front of that building. Someone came there to do a specific task, was successful in that task, and then fled.
To find the Connells' killer, detectives will need to reconstruct the final 24 hours of their lives.
So police know that between 1:16 a.m. and 1:19 a.m., there were the sounds of gunshots, and that provides a window for when this might have occurred.
Timelines are important, generally speaking, because they give you a starting point. We have the homicide of Joe and Olga Connell, and then we work backwards. And in working backwards, we need to figure out who Joe and or Olga were talking to, who they might have been with, who they had seen before they were killed.
To help fill out the couple's final hours, investigators speak with Joe's mother, Mickey.
Olga was going to be 39 years old. So that night, they went to dinner with some of their friends.
There was food, there was drink, and it was, all their close friends. Everybody left around 12:30, and then Joe and Olga hung around for a little bit. Maybe they had a last drink, and they left around 1 o'clock.
Detectives ask Mickey if she knows of anyone with a grudge against Olga or Joe. She offers up an unexpected tale of bitter sibling rivalry.
I have 4 children, and everyone grew up in Delaware. Kelly is the youngest, then comes Joe. I was closest with Joey growing up. He was a jokester, prankster, did a lot of pranks to me. I grew up always knowing Joey was the favorite. It just is how it was. He got everything he wanted, no matter what it was. It was always given to him.
Detectives learned that years earlier, when Kelly got married, her mother gave her a diamond ring. The family heirloom soon became a point of contention between the siblings.
Joey said, "Mom, I would really like to marry Olga. And I was wondering what you did with your ring." I said, "I gave him to Kelly." And he said, "Do you think you can get him back from Kelly?" So I got the ring. I gave it to Joe. So I didn't see where Kelly would really need that ring at that time, because she's divorced. And Joey asked me, and I would do anything for Joey. When Kelly found out, this was bad. It was a $20,000 ring. I was really angry. I just felt kicked in the teeth.
Furious, Kelly confronts Joe and Olga.
She made texts to Olga, asking for the ring back. And Olga was upset. That's when the fight started. Joe was livid. Joe said, "I don't want anything to ever do with you or your children again. Stay the F away." They were getting nasty.
When the couple's home is burglarized shortly before the murder, all eyes turn towards Kelly.
In July of that year, someone had pried open their front door and stolen some jewelry, a laptop, and fled.
Joe thought Kelly did it because he was telling people. And some of the family said, "Oh, Kelly probably did it." All arrows pointed to Kelly. So I was caught in the middle of thinking, did she or did she not?
It's not uncommon for family to kill family. But did it happen? In this case, Sergeant Breslin and I had to get in there and figure out exactly what happened.
In the brutal murder of Joe and Olga Connell, detectives zero in on a surprising suspect. Joe's sister, Kelly.
Joe, Kelly, and Olga had been fighting over this ring and that burglary. The feud intensified, and Olga tried to get what we call here in Delaware a protection from abuse order, or you may know as a restraining order. The feud was certainly something that could come to violence.
Did this family feud that they have rise to the level of a sister wanting to have her brother killed? Or possibly physically killing her brother?
Detectives bring Joe's sister Kelly into the station for questioning.
Kelly's reaction when we told her what happened to her brother, it weighed heavy on her. We would have to go through 15 minutes allowing her to compose herself every time we talked to her. But her reaction could be faked.
With suspicion swirling around Kelly, police ask about her whereabouts the night of the murders.
I'm home recovering from surgery at this time. I'm just home, focusing on me, focusing on my kids, broken-hearted that Joey's not there for me.
Detectives dig into Kelly's story to confirm whether she's telling the truth or lying.
We learned that just prior to her brother's death, Kelly had had a medical procedure done that kind of rendered her not necessarily bedridden, but she didn't go out of the house very often. She was weak, she was tired. We're looking through her phone and see she's communicating with people that night, telling them, hey, I'm at home tonight, or yeah, I'm not leaving the house. And also, GPS tower locations show that she was where she said she was. On top of all that, we know she had no means to pay someone to do this. This double homicide. If it was a paid contract, it's not cheap. At this point in time, Sergeant Breslin and I were confident that Kelly's not the driving force behind the death of her brother and his wife.
Before leaving, Kelly reveals there's someone she's always been suspicious of. Joe's business partner, Chris Rivers.
Kelly was not fond of Chris Rivers. She had nothing good to say about Chris.
Chris and Joe partnered at this one shop called CNS Automotive. Chris bought this old Jiffy Lube, but he converted it into a high-tech auto repair shop, and it was very successful. Joe goes to work at the shop. Joe was a good mechanic, and he's reliable, and Chris asked Joe to be his partner.
Looking for answers, detectives bring Chris Rivers down to the station for questioning.
Talking to Chris Rivers, you could see that he was visibly nervous. He was breathing heavily, and you could see his pulse in his neck. We told him we were there to speak to him about his business partner.
Early this morning, we received a call about a shooting in Paladin Club, where Olga and Joe live, and both of them were killed. Are you serious? Do they know who did it?
Chris's reaction to Joe and Olga's death raises a red flag.
Genuine grief just didn't really manifest itself at all. I gave him a minute, kind of stepped away and watched from the monitoring room to see if maybe it's just because there's just like machismo, he doesn't want to break down and cry in front of me. It's just never changed. It was this fake, repetitive, oh my god, oh my god.
Oh my god.
It varies case by case. What tells, what reveals a suspect who's actually committed the crime will sort of unveil for investigators. Some will go too far, will go over the top. Excessive grief. Some become too restrained. Everyone deals with grief differently, so you don't want to focus too much on a grieving person's behavior.
Despite his odd reaction, Chris is forthcoming.
He told us Joe had done a little time in prison after an incident at a bar where he brandished a shotgun.
He was convicted at a jury trial of firearms harsh charges, some aggravated menacing charges, and ends up with a mandatory prison sentence.
After getting out of prison, Joe tried to turn his life around.
Joe was attempting to do everything right. He got this job. He's staying out of trouble, by all accounts. There's no record of him getting into any sort of probation trouble after his initial prison term. He seems to be on the right track.
But Chris says, as the business grew, the partnership started to fall apart, especially after Joe hired Olga as their receptionist.
He then goes on to say that Olga works there too, and they're always together, and they leave early together. Ultimately, Chris says that Joe had become a problem around the shop. He wasn't pulling his weight. He wasn't working full hours.
So you said he wouldn't come to work. What was his explanation for that? He said he had stuff to do, running around, had meetings to go to with Olga. I mean, whenever I wasn't there, I'd still hear stories, people stopping by, he disappearing.
With tension at play between Chris and Joe, detectives ask him where he was the night of the murders.
Now we need to kind of establish this timeline. When's the last time you spoke to Joe? When's the last time you guys had met up or you socialized? So he begins to give me more or less a play-by-play of his whereabouts.
Chris was supposed to show up for a celebration of Olga's birthday. However, Chris never showed up. He never made it to the bar.
He was late getting done from work. And then he had to get his child's mom dinner. Then he says that he went home. So I asked Chris for times, are you having any communication with him back and forth? He said, yeah, we were texting back and forth related to, are you coming down to this party?
According to Chris, at 11:38, Joe texted, saying he and Olga would only be out for another hour. So Chris decides to stay home for the night.
Chris said that he was home, and he said that he had surveillance to support his alibi at the time of the murder.
So you go from the shop to your house, or I have video at my house? Oh, you do? Okay. What time do you get to your house? I'd say around 11 o'clock.
Chris told us to take my surveillance cameras that I have both inside and outside of my house.
Detectives dig into Chris's alibi for the night of the murders.
So we have more or less this timeline from surveillance cameras and Joe's phone that shows this communication between he and Chris. We talked to his child's mother, who said, yeah, he came in about 11 with dinner. We had good, quality, credible information. Chris was home when Joe and Olga were killed. That was clear. He got home about 11, and he left the following morning.
With his alibi confirmed for the time of the killings, Chris tells police he has some information he's been holding back.
Chris says that Joe used a lot of steroids. And Joe sells steroids from my shop. Chris says to me, it makes me mad, and I'm angry about it, and I confronted him about it. And he ultimately says to me, I don't want these guys coming after me. I said, what guys are you referring to? He's like, well, this has got to be about steroids.
As detectives consider that the murders could be related to Joe's illegal side venture, Chris makes his most startling disclosure yet.
Chris had offered up that Joe was involved with or a member of a outlaw motorcycle club called the Pagans. Chris had suggested that maybe the Pagans could be responsible for this. We look at the fact that, one, that Joe and Olga were executed. Two, we know now from Chris that Joe was selling steroids. And now enter this outlaw motorcycle club. For what we know about their organization. Killing, drug dealing, all these things kind of fit in with the way they operate. So we're thinking that, yeah, this actually is something to follow.
These are money-driven organizations at the end of the day. And it looks as though Joe may have been in deep to these people.
In the brutal double homicide of Joe and Olga Connell, police are working a new theory that the newlyweds could have been killed by outlaw motorcycle gang, the Pagans.
Talking to different friends and family members, we found out while Joe was in prison, he became acquainted with the Pagans Motorcycle Club, and they became close. And Joe would associate with the Pagans.
We loved all of them because they were a group of riders. When he came out of prison, they liked to ride together. I knew a couple of them, and one of them that really was a good friend of Joe's.
Through their law enforcement sources, the police checked the Pagans to see if there was any beef with Joe. They assured the police, no, we got no problem with Joe Connell.
But could this be a lie being fed to them by lower-level gang members?
We were able to get in touch with a member of that club who held an authoritative type position. He reiterated to us that Joe was a friend of several of the members there, but that they had nothing to do with his death, that they were as taken aback by it as everyone else. So we were able to close the book on that, at least for the time being.
With the Pagans' lead eliminated, the investigation into the double homicide of Joe and Olga Connell hits a wall.
People that live in Wilmington and around Wilmington were worried about all these shootings. 2 people ended up dead in front of their condo building, and these killers were still walking the streets.
There's the pressure you put on yourself, and also the pressure from these external factors when it comes to narrowing down the suspect. We're working through these theories that we have. So eventually, one of these is going to lead to something.
Police widen the scope of their investigation, looking at anyone in the Connells' lives they may have missed who had motive to want them dead.
We also sent out a media request saying, hey, anything you guys know about these people, can you please call us? And we were getting anonymous tips about a guy named Harry. He knew Joe. He would be up at CNS Automotive, Chris and Joe's auto shop from time to time.
Searching Harry's name in their database, detectives discover he has a long rap sheet.
Harry Cook does have, in fact, a history with criminal activity, and also he lives really close to the scene of these homicides. So we focus our attention on him.
With Harry in their crosshairs, police haul him down to the station for questioning.
Let's start it off a little adversarial, and Harry Cook tells us, I'm not speaking to you. We need to figure out what's happening, and figure out his whereabouts around the time of this homicide. We ultimately end up with a search warrant at his house and his phone records. But there's nothing that's really out of the ordinary.
The search doesn't turn up anything connected to the murders. Looking for more information, investigators question Harry's girlfriend.
And she says, look, I don't really know a lot about Harry's business dealings, but I do know on the day that Joe and Olga were killed, Harry was in Pittsburgh. He went up there with some friends to watch a Steelers game. So we trekked up to Pittsburgh, found him on video, and realized, okay, this guy has this alibi.
Once Harry is cleared as a suspect, he agrees to cooperate with detectives.
He was really forthcoming with information about what he knew. He told us that he was an investor in CNS Automotive. He invested over $150,000 into that business.
He told the police, Chris is always looking for partners to put cash infusion into the shop. His father had put $325,000 into the business.
Detectives question why Chris Rivers, who's running a successful business, would be in need of so much cash.
Harry said that Chris was blowing through money because he was buying drugs.
He's spending, by some accounts, like $4,000 a week just on prescription painkillers. He was doing a lot of them. 100 oxycodone pills like twice a week, and sometimes cocaine. So Chris had a very expensive drug habit, and he had a habit of not paying his bills. He had debts, and he owed a lot of people a lot of money.
He always told everyone Joe Connell was spending everything, living lavishly, going out to eat, buying expensive Mercedes. Or in actuality, Chris Rivers was the one spending all the money.
As investigators comb through the automotive shop's financials, they make a crucial new discovery.
We found out there was a large insurance policy that Chris and Joe Connell placed on one another for the business. So they essentially insured one another. If something happened to one, the other would be paid. The life insurance policy that Chris Rivers had on Joe Connell was for $1 million.
Chris is reported to have a significant debt. It's possible that he could resort to desperate measures in an effort to repay this debt or to obtain even more financial resources. It certainly wouldn't be beyond the realm of possibility for somebody to kill to obtain that money.
Police can now see a clear motive for Chris to kill his partner, Joe. Money.
Harry said that several months before, Chris was visibly upset. He'd been crying, he was angry, and he went on about how Joe was taking money, and Chris couldn't pay the mortgage, and he couldn't buy food for his kid, and kind of like doom and gloom. Chris had been bad-mouthing Joe a lot. Then Harry says that Chris makes this really odd comment to him. He says, I'm just gonna have Joe killed.
After a series of false starts and dead ends, investigators circle back to a previous suspect in Olga and Joe Connell's murder, Joe's business partner, Chris Rivers.
Chris Rivers was interesting because there was money and greed, drugs, but we have good information that he is at home when the homicide happens. You always have to keep that in your mind, that I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole when we should be over here, looking at other possibilities.
Looking for evidence connecting Chris to the Connells' murders, police conduct a search of Joe and Chris's automotive shop.
We find steroids in the shop. And then Chris comes back to our police station.
Chris Rivers described the steroids that were at the shop as being Joe's. He specifically told us that they were there. And he said, I told him to get that stuff out of the shop, but he keeps selling it.
The decision been made amongst us that we're going to charge Chris with possession of these steroids that were in his shop. So I inform him of that, and he requests an attorney and says, I'm not talking to you anymore.
With Chris refusing to talk, investigators subpoena his cell phone records. They uncover calls and text messages deleted around the time of the Connells' murders.
We have Chris's call detail records, who he was calling, who he was texting. Chris had deleted a lot of communication between he and an unknown phone number. We learned that that number is associated with a guy named Joshua Bay.
Joshua Bay and Chris Rivers texting back and forth prior to the homicide.
Digging into Joshua Bay's background, investigators learn he has a checkered past.
He's a felon who had gun convictions. Most recently, he was on probation for passing counterfeit $100 bills at the casino south of Wilmington.
When you look at the cases in which he was involved in, he always made some sort of deal. He always offered up some sort of information to help him. And we thought maybe that would be beneficial to us.
Detectives haul Joshua Bay down to the station for questioning.
The first time I talked to Josh, I just want to know, hey man, how do you know Chris Rivers? Do you know Chris Rivers? You know, we couldn't even get past that. No, I have no idea who he is. Then he said, oh, he's my mechanic. Okay, why were you talking to him at 11 o'clock at night on the 21st? I must have butt dialed him.
So they go to Bay. But why did you call him several times the night of this murder? He called you too. Bay comes back and has another story. So the police say, well, no, that's not true either, is it?
He essentially lied repeatedly to Sergeant Leonard during that interview. And he was charged with providing a false statement.
And he admits that he sells Chris pills and sometimes cocaine.
Believing Chris and Joshua were working together, investigators dig into Joshua's phone records, looking for evidence of a conspiracy.
On the night of the murders, you see Chris Rivers communicating with Josh Bay, and then Josh Bay in turn communicating with someone else.
And that number came back to a guy named Dominique Benson. Dominique was known to law enforcement and to other people around Wilmington as being a contract hitman.
Investigators also learned that hitman Dominique often worked with another man named Aaron Thompson.
He said there are 2 paid assassins that will do hits for $10,000 apiece. And he had named Benson and Thompson as these guys.
Working to establish there was a conspiracy to kill the Connells, investigators also searched through Dominique Benson's phone records.
We found this communication between all these people that we're talking about up to this point. Joe, Chris, Josh, Dominique is all linear. You see that after Joe talks to Chris, and Chris talks to Josh, Josh talks to Dom. Dom then calls the guy named Aaron Thompson. The information was all starting to kind of come together, but it all hinged upon Josh putting context to this conversation. The only person that sat right in the middle of all this was Joshua Bay. He'd be able to tie the front and the back end together for us. But Josh isn't moving on his position that he does not have any information to offer. So we're dead in the water from this point forward unless Joshua Bay can provide us some information.
Investigators suspect Olga and Joe Connell were killed in a conspiracy, masterminded by Joe's business partner, Chris Rivers, to collect on a $1 million life insurance policy. Rivers' acquaintance, Joshua Bay, is key to cracking the case, but police can't get him to talk.
Frequently the low-hanging fruit, or in this case, somebody in the middle, if you can get to them first, you can work the chain of the conspiracy up from there.
So we are preparing for Josh Bay providing a false statement to law enforcement trial. Sergeant President and I went up to the courthouse to process Josh on his arrest warrant. At the courthouse, Josh offered us basically a full confession in what his involvement was in this entire incident.
Josh finally collapses and gives in to what we call death by 1,000 cuts. The investigators in this case were relentless, and ultimately that proved to be too much for this guy.
When detectives question Joshua Bay, he says to understand his role in Joe and Olga's murders, he has to go back to when he met Chris.
From time to time, you go to CNS Automotive to have his car worked on. Josh had been in a car accident, had been prescribed oxycodone. Chris says something to Josh to the effect of, hey, do you sell those? Josh says, yeah, these are prescribed. I can get you whatever you need. So they began to forge this relationship based solely upon the sale of drugs.
Over the years, Chris starts confiding in Joshua about his business partnership.
Chris says Joe steals money. Joe doesn't come to work. Joe drives fancy cars. Then Chris asked Josh something to the effect of, hey, you know anybody that could take him out? And Josh says, I was a little taken aback. I'm wondering if they're trying to set me up. So I laugh it off. And a couple months later, Chris says, no, I'm serious. What are we talking about? I'll pay whatever. Chris and Josh go back and forth on price. And Josh tells us that he went so far as to ask Chris, well, why do we have to kill Olga? And he says that Chris said, I don't know what will they have. I want to make sure she doesn't get half this business. Ultimately decide that Dominique's going to do the killing with Aaron Thompson. From From that point on, Joe and Olga became more or less hunted.
Joshua reveals that prior to the murder, Chris orchestrated the break-in at the Connells' home, then worked to shift the blame.
He had Josh Bay burglarize Joe's home. And then Chris had a burner phone and he was sending these threatening texts from me to Joe and Olga to the point where they tried to get a restraining order. Chris was fueling this fight between Joe and I. I didn't know all this was going on.
With Joshua's confession, detectives are now able to fill in the final 24 hours of Joe and Olga Connell's lives.
Josh says on the day of the actual killing, he reaches out to Chris. Chris says something to him like, tonight's the night. At 7 o'clock, they're going out to a restaurant.
On September 21st at 7 p.m., the Connells head out to celebrate Olga's birthday with friends.
So at 8 p.m., Chris is at the shop. He texts Joe to find out if they're at dinner, and Chris talked about that he would actually go. But then at 11, Chris arrived home with his food for his girlfriend. At 11:38, Joe texts and says, "Look, we're going to stay about another hour. We're having a good time." At 11:43, 5 minutes after Joe texts Chris, Chris texts Bay, and then Bay follows up with a text to Benson, and Benson follows up with a text to Aaron Thompson. So they're all on the same page before the murders.
Olga and Joe leave the restaurant at 1 a.m. and head straight home.
At 1:15, they arrive home. They walk up to the door. Olga puts her keys into the lock and goes to open it. And someone started firing. Joe tried to take off. Someone ran after him and shot at him, got him down, and fired point blank in the back of his head.
It was horrible. He died hating me. Yep. It's the worst. My family really believed for a long time that I had something to do with this. That really hurts me. It was awful. Chris had all of us fooled. At the end, he took the heart of our family away from us.
Joshua Bay, the middleman, pleads guilty to conspiracy and is sentenced to 5 years. Hitman Aaron Thompson is convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder. He's sentenced to 2 life sentences, plus 45 years. His partner, Dominique Benson, receives 5 years for conspiracy.
These guys were foolish enough to use their own phones. But thankfully for us, they did, because taking the evidence that we have and meshing them into this timeline, we were able to push the whole thing together and see it through to successful prosecution.
Finally, mastermind Chris Rivers is convicted of conspiracy and 2 counts of first-degree murder. He's sentenced to 2 life sentences, plus 50 years.
This crime, I think, speaks to, number 1, the psychopathic undercurrent that was driving him. But number 2, entitlement and greed. And there's really no other way to slice it.
I want people to remember Joe and Olga and about the tragedy that happened to them and how horrific it was. It was a massacre. I want everybody to know that the type of person that created this murder is a devil.
It's good to know that there's some sort of closure for their family. It's not hanging unsolved. But it'll never heal the wound of it all.
When you love somebody, make sure you tell them you love them. Make up with everybody. Don't go to sleep angry. You might never get the chance again. You have to tell them you love them. That's a hard thing to deal with. Kelly and I are very close now. Went through a whole lot. And thank God. But We missed everything about Joe and Olga.